All right, it is 7 p.m. by my watch, and I am calling the Lunenburg Finance Committee to order. This is the Thursday, September 29th meeting, taking place in the Bellata Meeting Room. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access channel and on Facebook Live. On the Public Access Facebook page, the following information is provided for members of the public that would like to participate in the meeting remotely. To participate remotely from a computer, please use the link listed in the agenda posted on the town website. To join the Zoom call itself, or from a telephone, dial the toll-free number 888-475-4499 and enter web ID 792-737-0353. This agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by open meeting law. With that, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any announcements from anyone on the committee?
More of a question than an announcement. Have you guys been receiving the emails from the Massachusetts Association of Town Finance Committees about their upcoming meetings?
It's funny you should mention that. I got an email from Elaine today. She just registered us, or she paid our dues, and she just saw it in the
Okay.
Finance Committee mailbox downstairs. It's been there since July.
Oh, okay. So there's a association of town, as an announcement, there is an Association of Town Finance Committees annual meeting at the Sharon Community Center on November the 5th, and I will forward this announcement to all of the members. And I believe there's a way that you could either email or sign up on their website to get on their mailing list, and I would encourage people to do so because I think at this point I'm the only one on their mailing list. So that's it.
I get it.
Oh, you do? Okay. I'm one of two.
Are you going to go this year, Peter?
I'm not.
Any other announcements? Any public comment from the public? Hearing none. Any public comment? Oh, let our town manager in. That would be good. There we go. Is there any public comment from the committee? Hearing none. So my chair's report was going to be exactly that, Peter, so thank you for doing that. That's fantastic. Yes, I would encourage. I'm planning to attend this year, so I would encourage those as well. It's a Saturday. I expect it to be a full-day event. Never gone before, but I look forward to going to it. With that, let's move on to the town manager and finance director report, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi there.
I wasn't sure if Karen was in the room, so I was
She is. She's here.
Okay. Karen, why don't you go ahead of me?
Mine is really short, but I just wanted to let you know that I spoke with David Eisenthal, our financial advisor. I had forwarded the email chain that Evan had sent out with the request that you guys were looking for on financing. And he is going to put together some scenarios for us, and he should have something back to us next week. And he also said that once it's reviewed by Heather, myself, and the Finance Committee, if you had any questions, he would be happy to come and meet with you either in person or via Zoom at one of your upcoming meetings.
Excellent.
Just so you know that.
Thank you very much.
That's all I have.
Madam Town Manager?
You're muted.
You're muted.
Just a couple updates from the last meeting. So the streetlights purchased from Unitil went through on the 15th. So we're now the owners of the streetlights, and the DPW can be contacted if there is any issues with streetlights. So that was put out on social media and the website. Green Communities is working on an RFP for that. I attended their last meeting, so that's in the process of discussing of what that will look like, whether we can separate out assessment and audit of the streetlights from the conversion cost or not, or it has to be all inclusive for the grant purposes. So that's in the works. ARPA funding, the select board is receiving requests for ARPA funding until tomorrow. So they'll review those requests on Tuesday, the October 4th meeting, and I assume they'll prioritize requests based on the responses they receive. And they'll probably likely call in the requesters at their future meetings to get more information on those requests. Capital planning process has kicked off, so all the departments have been sent all the forms for capital planning. Those are due back October 13th, and the capital planning committee meets next on October 17th to do a preliminary review, and then we'll start meeting with departments after that. We've had a kickoff for our fraud risk assessment, which was our last comment, last remaining comment on our last audit. So we, at our department head meeting this week, actually, the fraud risk assessment, one of the members from that team came out and met with, just to introduce himself. They've all received most of them, I think, have received the questionnaires that go out with as part of that assessment. So everyone will complete a questionnaire form, and ultimately we receive a report summarizing the results of the town's operational procedures, identify any areas of risk, and develop administrative and departmental actions to minimize those risks. So that should all be wrapped up in the next couple months. The economic development bill is still up in the air. I don't know if anyone's been following that. But the 1986 tax relief law, known as Chapter 62F, which is returning approximately $2.9 billion back to taxpayers via checks and direct deposits, has now brought back the economic development bill back to the legislature. So no action to date has been taken on that. They're back in informal session on Monday, and as I understand it, through Governor Baker, believes that they can't take any action, being in informal session, on any borrowing related to that bill. So it would be strictly items related to, not related to borrowing. The library trust funds bill was signed by the governor on August 24th, and that is now titled Chapter 189 of the Acts of 2022. And I reached out to our legislators regarding the supplemental budget bill, and there are no earmarks proposed for that in the supplemental budget bill, so there's nothing for us to submit. That's all I have right now.
Have we had any requests to do any repairs to any of the streetlights yet?
No.
Nothing yet that we know of? Okay. And I assume that's just as simple as calling up the DPW and saying, hey, we've got a streetlight that's either out or broken or whatever it may be.
Okay. It also can be submitted, they have a form, online form through the website that can be submitted that way.
Excellent.
Do we plan to make any requests through legislators or otherwise related to Unitil's rate hikes that are potentially forthcoming?
Nothing that's been discussed by the board yet. We just received that's an update I can give too on our electricity accounts. Is we just received the notice that those proposed rates are out at over 22 cents a kilowatt hour. There is, I think, a public hearing related to, it's basically an incidental amount to that rate, but nothing that we've discussed at a meeting. But related to our electricity accounts, so I've been working with our energy broker since last spring, and we've continued to see rates rising and rising and rising. So I worked with our municipal aggregation broker and adding all of our accounts to the municipal aggregation program. And so we locked in to 11.74 as far as our rates, and that will last until November of 2024.
Excellent.
Any other questions for the town manager? Thank you very much. All right, so by this time, I assume everyone has had a chance to take a look at the first draft of the special town meeting warrant articles. I just kind of wanted to process through them and just see if there are any questions that we have for town manager or for the finance director as well, as they kind of pertain to the finance committee. I don't think there's any reason to read through all of them, but I will at least read through the ones that I've kind of identified as financially backed. So if we want to start with, let's see, would it be easier? I wanted to post this. I can share my screen. Let me just pull it up real quick. Okay. All right. So starting with Article A at this point. Article A reads to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds all sums of money necessary to amend the amounts voted for the town's FY23 budget under Article 8 of the May 7th, 2022 town meeting, or take any action relative thereto. Submitted by the town manager. Madam Town Manager, do you want to speak to this one? Do you have any estimates or anything at this point?
At this point, I don't have a full assessment of the amendments. Ones I have mentioned before are the EPDC has requested funds for a budget, just basically operational needs, as well as the cyclical inspections for the data and collection for the assessor's office. But that number right now, I do not have.
Okay. Do we have any idea whatsoever if this is going to be relatively close to what was, or is this just to finagle the numbers within the approved amount that was appropriated at that town meeting, correct?
We're still waiting on new growth figures. So, and once those are certified, that will, obviously inform us what our bottom line number is for the FY '23 budget.
What's our current unappropriated number?
I don't have that fully available. It was, Karen, do you have that?
I can find it. I don't know what else.
Okay, it's not urgent. I think for our benefit and for those who are watching, just so that everybody's aware, the calendar is such that our next meeting, or the next meeting of the Finance Committee, I should not put this in the first person anymore, is the 13th of October, and that will be a public hearing.
Correct.
And the Finance Committee will vote recommendations on the articles that night. So this is not that far off.
Nope.
When does that have to be publicized?
It would be right after that. So the Board of Selectmen or Select Board votes on the 18th.
No, when will the public hearing will be advertised? It should be-
Advertised.
It's already been put to the ledger.
It should be in
Yeah.
this week's ledger.
Correct.
The surplus from town meeting was $185,939, but that didn't include any changes in growth or cherry sheet.
Right.
or-
So all that needs to get resolved in the next couple weeks. Okay.
Is it possible that we could at least get these numbers prior to our public hearing meeting on the 13th, with any luck?
Yes, I would assume that it'd come before the public hearing.
Okay, fantastic. Any other questions for A? All right, moving on to B, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money for payment of prior year expenses or take any action relative thereto. Any comment on this one, either Ms. Brochu or Ms. Lemieux?
I'm aware of 2 prior year bills that would be under this article. Both for relatively nominal amounts.
If I remember from previous years, they're usually very small.
Yeah, at most it's like 3,000.
Right, exactly.
These are FY '22 expenses.
Correct.
Okay. Good.
Other questions? Flying through. Letter C, to see if the town will raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money to fund the first year of the FY '23, FY '24, and FY '25 Lunenburg Police Officers Collective Bargaining Agreement dated July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2025 with the New England Police Benevolent Association Local 353, or take any other action relative thereto. Do we have a number for this one yet? I would assume if we've already gone through collective bargaining that we would have a number.
We have to sign a MOA with the collective bargaining agreement, so I do not have a number at this time. But we are trying to wrap that up as soon as possible.
What do you anticipate the timeline on that is?
My hope is that the board will be discussing this at their October 11th meeting.
Other questions?
No.
Easy enough. All right, letter D, to see if the town will vote to transfer a sum of money to the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund or take any other action relative thereto. Is the plan for that simply just whatever is left over?
Correct, similar to previous years, any excess appropriation we transferred to that account, at least last year.
And right now, is that relatively close to the number that you were talking about, Ms. Brochu?
I'll let Heather answer that. Well, I think until we get gross certified,
Right.
and we don't know, but I mean, the $185,000 that was left on the table at the annual town meeting, there'll probably be things within the budget appropriation that will use up some of that, and then the surplus, I'm thinking that
Okay.
Should Article D come after some of these other potential appropriations in terms of order?
Yes, they're in the order that, right now, that I would anticipate they would stay in.
Okay, so just bear with me on the logic here. Article D is a transfer of a sum to a special purpose stabilization fund, right? Which we funded to a certain extent in the spring. We then have articles.
We've also funded it in the fall.
I understand that, and I understand the thinking there, but then we have articles like F, which is an appropriation for Marshall Park. We have a couple of known numbers in Article G and Article H. We have Article I, which deals with the primary school air conditioning. So there's other like.
Right, these aren't in the final order. I think
Okay, so that's what I was getting to, Madam Town Manager, is in my mind, the stabilization article should come after all of these other ones, because we got to decide if we're going to, any stabilization article is kind of like, for lack of more eloquent words, leftover money, right? So wouldn't that naturally come after those articles?
yeah, but yes. And when I sent this around, I said it was in the final order.
Okay. All right, I guess I misunderstood you, but okay, that's fine. We understand each other now.
Any other questions? All right, letter E. To be honest, I had a difficult time deciding if this was actually going to be
So is there a financial impact on this?
right. Because it seems like there would be, but at the same time, it seems like we're just adding or just getting into line with Massachusetts general law.
This, I think, still is undetermined whether will have a financial impact. I think it may and that's a question I think we need to talk to our actuarial about.
Can you decipher this down into like layman's terms? Because there's no period in half a...
So essentially, anything over 5 years of credible service that police or fire employees who have worked for the town of Lunenburg, not where they have worked with other towns, but if they have credible service with the town of Lunenburg, like on-call firefighters that have worked for the town, that would go towards their entirety of credible service for retirement.
So it just puts their years towards their service years?
Yes.
Regardless of whether or not they were actually a full-time employee or just an on-call or any other option that they can have.
Right, if they're full-time, they already get that
Right, okay.
towards their retirement. It's the on-call or part-time status, reserve status.
So this is a provision of what is currently in Mass General laws.
Correct. As I understand it, and this will be discussed more at the selectmen's meeting on Tuesday, the firefighter, that Lieutenant Christos Likadakis, who brought this forward, will come and explain the whole intent of it. But I believe that the Worcester County retirement system would have had voted to endorse this first, and that was done at a meeting they held. That is also a provision within Mass General Law.
Okay. And so the other question is, first of all, I'm scanning the reading of this, desperately trying to find a closed quote on the provision of Mass General Law, and I can't find it. But the reason why I was looking, I'm assuming it's after commissioners of said county, it was where it should be. But then what I'm wondering is, what are we accepting? If you're accepting a provision, you would be accepting that provision into some sort of other bylaw or code or bargaining agreement or something, but it's not clear what this is, what we're applying this to.
You're accepting, the town would be accepting that provision of Mass General Law as quoted.
So,
Shouldn't we already be?
yeah, I guess as a town, like, isn't it applicable to us just by way of it being in Mass General Law?
No.
Okay, so we have
No,
the
there's-
option of saying no?
Correct. There's certain provisions of Mass General Law that towns have the option of accepting.
Okay,
This would be one of them.
okay. And then where does that go? So for example, if we were to say, no, we don't accept it, like, does that become enshrined in some sort of municipal document, or how do, the whole concept is very confusing to me, because we're, under the terms of like federal and state supremacy, if there are laws that we don't accept or subscribe to, where are those enshrined that we are not subscribing to certain ones but subscribing to others?
So being very preliminary, I don't know the full background on this, but what I can assume is that provided to Worcester County Retirement that we accepted this provision, and they would probably need the accepted minutes from the town clerk, that it was voted on affirmatively, and they would make that change to the retirement credible service for those affected employees.
Okay, all right.
And is this a simple majority vote, or would this be a 2/3 or 9/10 or one of those others?
That I'm not sure at this point. Town council is still doing a review on all the articles.
If this does pass at special town meeting, would this just be implemented as of that day? Is there a grandfather period that goes along with that, or is it just your 5+ years starts today?
That's a good question. I would assume it would not be retroactive. I think it would be all current employees, but that's a good question.
Sounds like there's still a lot of questions.
Yeah, well, that's why we review it before the public hearing and before the recommendations. Looking forward to clarity on this one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to see a period.
Any other questions? All right, letter F. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money for the property known as the Marshall Park, 100 Chestnut Street, as shown on Assessor's Map 60, Lot 18, and for final engineering and design, recreation, open space services area at this property, including all costs related or incidental thereto, or take any other action relative thereto. It's a tough one.
Too many incidentals.
Do we know what this number is yet?
They discussed this, I believe, at last night's meeting, the Parks Commission meeting, so I don't have any number from them yet.
We don't know. Okay. Sounds like there might be more, there could very easily be more money requested at this town meeting than we have to spend. So, could make for a interesting scenario of events.
So my understanding on this one is that if ARPA funds were used for this, we would probably pass over this at town meeting, right? Because this is redundant to the ARPA fund request that they voted to put forward last night.
I haven't talked to any of the park commissioners today, so I can't confirm that. And what my understanding is that, yes, and I haven't received a submittal through ARPA yet, so that is my understanding as well.
Does the select board expect or intend to take action on ARPA prior to special town meeting?
I can't answer that as well. They haven't, Tuesday is the first time they'll be discussing any ARPA requests.
Okay.
Yeah, so the thought from the Parks Commission on this was to put it in this avenue as well as through ARPA. So if for whatever reason, Select Board chose not to use ARPA fundings for this, which, you know, originally there seemed to be some positivity towards, you know, taking that approach, you know, they could go this route and not have to wait till May in order to start the
Get the
design.
ball rolling on this,
To get
yeah.
the ball rolling on it, yeah.
Okay. It's a good thing you know so much about the Parks Commission.
I know way too much about parks. I'm sure I'll get a text in a second.
So the final engineering and design portion, I assume that that's in a sense, it's a ready to go out to bid number, correct?
Yeah.
That's the end goal for that specific number?
Yeah, they are looking to do it in phases. And that was the other thing that they are looking to put forward in the ARPA request. So I guess we're kind of on town committee reports. But I think they're putting forward two requests, one for the design and one for the initial phase of Marshall Park implementation.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, moving on to G. To see if the town will vote to transfer from available funds $1,645.60 into the Sewer Reserve Capacity Stabilization Fund, or take any other action relative thereto. This is standard. This seems to be just the standard transfer.
Yeah, standard articles that the sewer commission submits every special town meeting.
Yep.
They're basically their amendment articles and money that they have available to put into reserves.
I think it's money that they received in the prior fiscal year that they want to now transfer into the stabilization accounts
Okay.
on both of them, this one and the next one.
I have no comments on G&H.
Okay. I'll read H just to get it read. To see if the town will vote to transfer from available funds $9,900 into the Sewer Inflow Infiltration Stabilization Fund, or take any other action relative thereto. Again, standard. Any questions?
So my only question on G and H is available funds. These are available funds in the, these are available sewer funds or available general fund funds?
No, it's sewer enterprise revenues.
Yeah,
And the
okay.
funding source for the articles, when they go to town
Okay, all right, you
meeting,
said this, okay.
will
I'm just-
be
was-
retained earnings from the sewer enterprise fund.
Okay, so this will be part of the motion,
Correct.
okay. Or potentially part of the warrant itself? In other words, these are draft warrant articles, so are we going to clarify this in the warrant, or are we going to clarify this in the motion, or both?
Typically, it's clarified in the motion.
Okay.
So I guess the question, to Peter's point, from available funds, not what, why not say from retained earnings?
Right. Yeah.
Sewer enterprise fund.
Just a, I guess, I mean,
In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter, I don't think, in terms of taking action on it at a town meeting.
yeah.
All right, letter I. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money necessary to amend the amount voted for approval for the primary school air conditioning, number LPS 19-3-B, under the FY 2023 capital plan, under Article 6 of the May 7th, 2022 annual town meeting, or take any other action relative thereto. Did we finally get a number for what this is going to cost, or at least an estimation?
I would,
No, we do not have actually, the chairman of the school committee is on. Maybe she wants to answer this.
Ms. Archambault?
Hi, we do not have a definite number yet. We have been told we will have a definite number by the 10th of October.
And that will be the full price for installation and everything that can go right up to bid?
That's what we have been told by the engineering firm.
Okay, with all necessary upgrades that have to take place as well to electrical and all the other concerns that were voiced afterwards?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent, thank you. Any other questions?
Okay.
Is this coming out of the capital plan?
it's, so the problem is that the number that went into the capital plan article may not be probably won't be, may not be sufficient. We really don't know yet.
I remember it was something like 300 and something thousand or
I can't
250,000.
remember the exact number.
It was relatively low
Right.
for where we are inflation.
And so, as was explained on the town meeting floor by the superintendent, it was the best guess number at the time. Additional engineering was not in, it's still not in. So this is here as effectively right now, a placeholder article, but I think it in fact will go to town meeting to seek the additional funds to be able to do the project.
Well, they've got a week and a half to get it in.
We had a week and a half to figure this out,
Hopefully they can get it to the school committee
11
soon.
days.
So knowing that a couple of these articles would be in the area of hundreds of thousands of dollars, do we have those amount of funds available to raise and appropriate?
As of right now, no. I mean, we need gross certified, that's a big one, and we had the 183 when we left town meeting, but I don't know what the intended funding sources were for these. Free cash isn't certified yet, but typically we don't appropriate that in the fall.
Free cash will likely be certified. and
Free
we
cash will be
Could
certified.
potentially
Could
appropriate.
potentially be a funding source, yes.
I imagine it would have to be if we approve all of these.
Yeah, I would expect
I
so.
don't see how we could afford all of these if we could.
But we don't have to approve them either. We could wait.
Is there a plan to take any of these off if the numbers come in and they are just astronomical?
That's a Heather question.
Yeah, I can't really make that, decision at this, or even recommendation at this point without knowing. I don't have all the information in front of me to make a decision. It may not even be needed. That's the point. It's there on the warrant in case it is needed, but it could be tabled. The other funding source could be, special purpose stabilization, that is another funding source that can fund articles. But, so I wouldn't want to make any kind of assertion without knowing all the information.
So one question with respect to primary school air conditioning, would we do primary school air conditioning work while school was in session, or would we more likely do it after annual town meeting, where this could wait till the annual town meeting?
Ms. Archambault? You're muted.
You're muted. You're muted, Carol.
Sorry. The discussion that I've heard is that depending on the amount of work that is going to be necessary, it could be done during one of the school vacations.
Well,
It depends on what the project is.
Okay. You know, so maybe if by the hearing and when we vote to recommend or not, if we could, you know, have the time associated with the project as well, and whether it would fit in the school year, that may weigh in on at least my current recommendation. I mean,
Sure
it seems
thing.
like we need to do it, it's just a matter of the timing.
I just want to add to that, a lot of the sponsors for these articles are coming into the next two select board meetings. On Tuesday, the Parks Commission is attending, the APDC article regarding additional credible service for part-time police and fire, and I think there's one other group coming. Oh, the lead use director for the planning board article.
Good.
And the following Tuesday will be all of their sponsors, 2 citizen petitions, the school committee if needed, because they should have a response by them about whether that article is needed or not.
Thank you. All right. Letter J, an adjustment to the salary administration plan. Historically, I believe we voted that those don't have a financial impact specifically. Would any of these positions add large amounts to anything we're expecting for salaries?
No, they're already funded positions.
Okay. Excellent. Letter K, I don't believe will end up having financial impact.
What is a civilian traffic member? Is that like a flag person?
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
It's like they do details.
Letter L, about the override of the APDC, repairs and alterations. Actually, I'll just read it because I believe that's probably going to come up for discussion. Letter L is to see if the town will vote to override the denial of certificate to alter by the Architectural Preservation District Commission for repairs or alterations to the building, exterior, and vestibule of the Ritter Memorial Building located at 960 Massachusetts Avenue, map 71, parcel 74, per the Code of Lunenburg, chapter 113, section 13, or take any other action thereto.
this one's gonna be fun,
Yeah.
but I honestly don't think there's financial impact to this one.
Financial impact.
It's gonna be fun, though.
It'll be a discussion, that's for sure. Madam Town Manager, would you agree? Probably not really much of a financial impact, at least from our perspective.
In my opinion, I actually do think there's a financial impact.
Okay. Could you explain?
Yeah.
So their denial of the certificate to alter that building was based on the windows of that building, and that they believe we should repair and maintain the existing windows, including the storm windows behind the windows. It's the position of the board, and I'll be meeting with the APDC and the facilities director as well next week. That is at the expense of the town as far as efficiencies, energy efficiencies, as well as cost for those windows for maintaining or replacing those existing windows versus replacing them with historical windows that look historical to the same window.
Is that the entirety of what was requested? Was it just the windows, or was there more to it? Because this gets into the vestibule, the exterior.
The whole application included the building exterior and vestibule, but the windows was the portion of the application that they denied.
So I recall a discussion, and my watching of selectmen meetings has not been quite as disciplined as it has been in the past, but my understanding is that the select board was weighing the option of resubmitting, but resubmitting under a petition to kind of keep the timeline as it existed without the windows. And there was some discussion as to whether that was prudent or not. I'm assuming the select board has decided not to do that, but to pursue this town meeting override approach. Is that an adequate or an
I would
accurate
say
description?
Those things are running parallel, so that's why I'll be attending next week's meeting. But they did want the option of putting it on the special town meeting warrant in case a decision wasn't made in time by special town meeting.
Okay. So there's a lot more water to kind of flow under the bridge between now and mid-November on this, it sounds like.
Yes, I believe so.
Madam Town Manager, do you know, I mean, so if there is a financial impact, and I understand your argument, do we know what the cost would be of fixing the windows relative to replacing? And do we know what the cost is of heating that building? And do we have a theory on, what the loss would be with less efficient windows?
At this point in time, we don't have those calculations that we're working, where the facilities director is working on assessment. And that may or may not be done in time, but I think the argument, I think would be a strong argument will be made that there is energy loss even with maintaining and repairing the existing windows versus replacing them with new windows.
I tend to agree. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. I think the problem is how much, right? So, I mean, we've had discussions here over the years about how much financial impact is financial impact and, theoretical versus calculable. And I think that I tend to agree with you, and I'd probably, given your argument, lean in that direction, but I think that it's worth a discussion.
All we have is a vote anyways, so
Yeah.
that's the net result of it. We can stipulate that it's minor or whatever, but. Remind me though, when we voted to take on the Architectural Preservation District Commission and set up an area for it, is there any grants and other things that we get because we have that, or we're eligible for because we have that?
That predates me, so I don't know if that was part of the discussion at that time. That was, around 2016 when the APDC was created?
Yeah,
Like 2015,
I don't recall.
adopted by the town of Lunenburg, 5/2/2015,
Yeah, it was around that time.
just from my memory. Any other questions? I'm sure this will be a lovely discussion.
It's going to be fun.
All right, letter M. Amending the code of Lunenburg for the APD, or Architectural Preservation District. Could you just kind of, again, sort of read through this, or at least break this down a little bit more for us to let us know what's changing, what's happening here?
If you just want to scroll down to the tract changes, that's essentially what they're proposing to change. The APD is proposing to change. And really it has to do with process and review.
Is there a reason the entirety of it is in here? Just out of curiosity?
That's how it was submitted by them.
Okay.
Preserves.
Yeah, this is a draft version. I want to start with that. So, yeah, right there is how applications are submitted. Normally, they're submitted to the planning board office. And now, I think they're looking for them to be directly submitted to the APDC.
These
And
are,
then it changes, yeah, the hearing process in the number of days for determination that can be made.
yeah. So these are, is my reading of these are predominantly process and language changes, which I would certainly give deference to the APDC on. I'm sure they've got good reason on these. I don't see financial impact
I don't as well.
on these, but I would strongly suggest that town council in his review figures out how to consolidate this, because there is a financial impact to all the paper we're printing here needlessly.
All right, letter N is the Finance Committee's article. Any comments or questions on that one before we move on? Hearing none.
I mean, I think we should take a vote on recommendation on it.
I assume so. It's probably a good idea, at least to be on the record.
So, just one thought on this. Obviously, I will not be on the finance committee when the time comes, but I would like to speak on it, to some extent. I also, the last time the select board took a straw poll on this back in August, they were unanimously against it. So my expectation is that the motion should probably be made by you, Evan, at town meeting. And then, the conversation and the presentation can go from there, and we can figure that out over the course of the next month and a half. But just something to think about, because, historically, these motions are made by a member of the select board, but we haven't been in a situation where the select board is unanimously against a motion that they have put on the warrant. So
I thought they were currently 3-2.
they were 3-2 in favor of putting it on the warrant, but there didn't seem to be any support from any members
Okay.
in terms of passing it. So that may change.
I don't foresee them, like the motion would be written as it's worded. It wouldn't be table this or pass over this. And the first recommendation on this goes to the finance anyways, so.
You think they're going to make a motion to pass over?
No, I said they would not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right, but yeah. No, I take them at their word that they're going to put it on the warrant and that a motion will be made. The question is who will make the motion and how will it proceed? So I think there's some discussion to be had between
I think it depends. We'll see how
yourself, Evan, and the
Yeah.
chairman of the select board in terms of how the,
I think we'll see how the select board votes on the
Yeah.
11th,
yeah,
and then
Yep.
go from there.
yeah.
But sure.
And I'm hopeful that maybe one or two of them might change their minds between now and then. So
Start your campaigning.
I intend to.
Is that out of the realm of possibility? If the article needs to be put forward by someone other, or the motion needs to be made by someone other than the select board?
No, a motion can be made by any member of town meeting.
Okay.
So it's just traditionally,
Right,
that's the way that
right.
these go down. But no, a motion can be made by any voter.
Okay. Sure.
I would hope procedurally the select board could go through their normal process of reading the motion and turning it over to finance committee for,
And I expect that's what would happen.
yeah. And then let the public decide if they want to keep control of the budget or give it all to the capital planning committee.
Another good conversation that we're going to have that day.
Oh, that'll be fun. So the other comment that I made already to the town manager via email, and she responded as she had to previous questions and comments this evening. I think that this item is out of order and needs to be taken before what are effectively zoning issues. So, because the preceding articles are zoning issues, this is a town meeting process and procedure bylaw issue, and the subsequent, the next article is a zoning issue. So I think I think that these should be grouped accordingly.
All right, letter O, to see if the town will vote to amend a zoning map by rezoning a portion of the land located at 199 Mass Ave from Residence A to Commercial District, so the entire lot is in the Commercial District as shown on a plan on file at the office of the town clerk, select board, and planning board, or take any other action thereto. Can't see that one taking too much of a financial impact, at least from our standpoint.
Just want to see where it is.
This is chapter lanes.
Oh, okay.
So, I happen to know a little bit about it. Mike and Mark Chapdelaine are my first cousins, so they've shared the story with me. They did not know that there was a zoning line that went through their property until recently, and are just looking to address it because it's been run as a commercial property since
50-something
forever.
years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it a big piece or just like a little?
It's a pretty good hunk, like basically the whole back half, the whole back 9, yeah, yeah, so.
Well, that'll be good.
There'll be a public hearing as well by the planning board on October 24th on this article. For both planning board articles.
Excellent. And lastly, to see if the town, letter P, to see if the town will vote to amend the Code of Lunenburg, Chapter 81, entitled Town Meetings as followed by deleting from Section 81.2 entitled Meetings and Election Dates. The sentence is, "The annual town meeting shall be held on the first Saturday in May commencing at 9 a.m., and all required reports shall be made at that time. The annual town election shall be held on the third Saturday in May commencing at 7 a.m. and ending at 5 p.m. In substituting the following sentences, therefore, the annual town meeting shall be held on the first Saturday in April commencing at 9 a.m., and all required reports shall be made at that time. The annual town election shall be held on the third Saturday in April commencing at 7 a.m. and ending at 5 p.m., or take any other action thereto."
Wow. Hadn't read that one.
Okay.
So there's probably not a financial impact. However, there is a
there's a budget-
There's
financial
a budget impact.
planning.
Processing.
There's a process impact. Is there anything that would totally preclude this? Besides, having to do everything 1 month earlier?
I don't think so.
Because I do know other towns do have their annual town meetings prior to ours.
Yeah, but some have them later, too.
Right.
That
Like-
seems too early to me, but
in 2020, I recall, because spend a lot of time in the spring months on my motorcycle. In 2020, when a lot of communities moved their town meetings outdoors, I noticed, they could have been rescheduled, just like we rescheduled ours, but
Yeah.
some were, very late. We all managed to get by, so I don't know. I would be
Curious to hear the reasoning for this.
I would be
Well,
very.
the merits behind it, I think, is just the participation would probably go up if it was in the beginning of April versus in May when soccer and baseball and
the
all these
weather's
other
nice,
activities
yeah.
are on. It's nice, and who wants to go sit for 12 hours in an uncomfortable seat? Although we get more comfortable seats on the finance committee. So if you join the finance committee, you do get a more comfortable seat.
Good plug.
Plus we get minutes.
And mints, yeah, I don't know where the mints come from, and they're under $5, so. But that would be, I think, the merits behind the article.
Do we know who submitted this, or is it?
Deb Christian?
Who?
Deb Christian? She's.
Deb Christian.
Kathy's sister.
she's-
Oh, yeah, okay. All right.
That'll be another one that's good for conversation.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
If this does pass, does that mean we would start with our our 2023 annual town meeting that April?
I don't know.
Good question.
Yeah, I don't know.
And if
the
so, how
answer
does
to
that affect our budget season? And how does that affect budget
Holy
planning?
smokes.
How does that affect?
Fiscal year stays the same, doesn't it?
Yeah, everything stays the same. Everything gets earlier, but I think you're right. I think this doesn't, without articulating a as of
We would-
date,
we would be-
it assumes immediately this becomes,
It doesn't say effective as of.
this is a bylaw change. So it's effective immediately, right? Because actually, no, bylaws need to go to the,
EG.
Yeah.
to the state to get approved by the Attorney General.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it could potentially be 3 months after town meeting that we receive approval.
Yeah, so,
I think there's going to be an amendment.
yeah, but we went, because, I remember, Dave Passios had submitted a bylaw change that was approved a couple of years ago. Or no, that was the charter that he was bird dogging. That took forever.
Yeah.
It wasn't a
Charters,
bylaw.
yeah, it needs to
So,
go
yeah.
before the,
Still needs to go to the Attorney General. Both do, right?
I think so. I'm not positive. Not my turf.
Zoning and regular bylaws.
Do, right, Heather?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, it'd be interesting.
Yeah, it certainly will.
And the fact that it's coming up at a special town meeting, legislating what we do at a annual town meeting, I think is, or when we have a annual town meeting. It's interesting.
Any other questions or comments on the draft articles for now? All right, hearing none. So we will have our public hearing to take votes and and everything on October 13th in this room. So
I won't be here.
we'll have 2 members gone, 1 member gone and 1 former member not here.
So that means that you do need to have
Need everybody here.
4 of you.
We do. So I will double check that after this meeting as well. But we will have numbers hopefully by then. We can go through everything. And I do encourage the next 2 select board meetings to be attended or at least watched after the fact. I certainly think we'll get some good information there as well. Thank you, Madam Town Manager.
You're welcome. If you have any questions that you want to either individually send me or the next 2 selectmen meetings, I can make sure that those questions are answered.
Thank you.
Welcome.
It just occurred to me as well that the a citizen's petition for a special town meeting is 100 signatures. So those citizens' petitions were substantial in terms of the number of signatures that were gotten to put those on the warrant. I am correct, right? It's 100 signatures for a special town meeting, or is it 50? I think it's 100.
I'm not sure.
And a bylaw is 2/3 vote?
A zoning bylaw is 2/3. A
Oh.
regular bylaw is 50 plus 1.
And aren't there some that at special town meeting have a higher threshold than at annual town meeting?
I think that has to do with appropriations.
So any of the raise and appropriate would need 2/3
Correct.
versus 50%?
Correct.
Okay.
Could be busy that day. See how many people we get. All right, switching gears over to budget season already. Or at least I wanted to have a kind of a pre-budget season workshop.
For April 1st or May 1st?
No, we'll see. Good thing we're starting now. So my idea here was to attempt to at least kind of brainstorm some ideas, or at least workshop some ideas for how we can not necessarily cut down on the length of cut down on the length of the meetings, but still not cut down on the substance of the meetings themselves. And see if there are other options. We do still have some fall meetings where so far I've scheduled, I think, the Board of Assessors, the new DPW director, and the school superintendent to come in and just sort of give us updates on what they're looking at and sort of get through the first portions of their presentations with us, where they kind of explain what their functions are, what they do, and then that gives us more time to focus on just the numbers when we get to actual budget season. But with that sort of in mind, I kind of wanted to open the discussion up and say, what else do we have for options or ideas for how we can work through budget season as economically as possible without having to be here until 10 o'clock every night, but still give due diligence to all the budgets that we're going to be seeing.
I mean, to me, the key is what has changed in your operational budgets from prior years, and then what's the impact of that, and then lay out what the budgets are. I think many departments, gave good overviews of what they did, but they weren't necessarily a budget discussion. It was kind of a good overview of the services that they provide and all that sort of thing. And perhaps, if that were made available, if they wanted to make that available, we could, read it beforehand, but then, dive into the budget and the changes to the prior budgets would be my recommendation on it. I think some of those were good over the last couple of years because we've had several new members. But otherwise, that would be my recommendation.
That was sort of my idea for having the informal meetings in the fall, was get through that process,
Yeah.
give them a platform to actually say, here's what we do, here's what our services are, and then we can reference back to that and say, okay, now, here's the document you want to look up, if you want to look up what they did before. Here's the document you want to look at that just has spreadsheets. Just,
I wish I could say that I had a great idea in terms of like, this will make it a lot faster. You know, the problem is that, I mean, one of the things is that I won't be a member, so that'll probably speed things up in and of itself.
see you when the school committee's here.
But I think that, number one, hopefully you will get a couple new members. But with that comes, I think the department heads are going to want to make it very clear in terms of what their remit is and their thought process in terms of approaching a budget, which is time consuming. If you don't, then you can say, assume we've heard, you know, or we've seen the slide about, you know, investing in pavement and that kind of thing, right? But it's a time-consuming process, you know, and I mean, I heard, the comment that we heard from the chairman of the select board a few weeks ago is not the first time I've heard that comment from him, right? I've heard it pretty regularly for the last few years, and he's absolutely right. It's time-consuming, and it's tough on all the personnel, starting with the town manager and the finance director. So, you know, whatever we can do to minimize that burden, I think we should be doing, but we need good ideas to help get us there.
So I suppose, do you want to say something? Somebody started, okay. So I suppose the difficulty is going to kind of come in with exactly that, Peter, is how do we give them the space to say, here is what's important and here's why we're doing this. And I don't want them to feel sort of shortchanged by saying, please don't put that stuff in there, or at least minimize it and don't say, you know, it's a difficult place because at one side, and I'll use, for example, Eagle House. They do a great job every year with the presentation, I think, and they put forward sort of, here's the number of people that we're helping, here's how we're helping them, here's why we're helping them. And I think that story is a necessary story. But I wonder if we need to sort of reformat that and say, yes, that is a wonderful story, and that story does need to certainly be told. But when we get to the actual budget portion of it, when we get to the budget meetings where we're here week in and week out.
Literally what's changed and what hasn't.
Right, is to sort of
Why?
just keep it at that simple point and use our more spacious meetings that we have in
I
the
think
fall.
I think that's a fair point. The other thing, as you were saying, that kind of popped into my head is that there may be certain topics that aren't necessary to even, there may be certain departments that aren't necessary to be presented during budget season, believe it or not, right? You know, last year I invited the Board of Health in because I had never heard them in 3 years and because they had a, you know, fairly substantial change in their number, so I invited them in. Probably don't need to have them back. Land use, you know, I mean, small numbers and don't tend to change dramatically from year to year. Unless there's a supposed change, do you need to have Adam come in and do his thing? General government, you know, we did have a substantial change last year in general government because there was a reorganization, but do we need it again this year? Maybe not. Eagle House, you know, so maybe that would help. You know, heck, you could probably reduce a meeting, just peeling off a few of those. I mean, I don't see how you ever get out of DPW and school and police and fire and, you know, like those you got to do.
Right.
I honestly didn't think last year was too bad time-wise. I mean, it is a couple months worth of, but it's in the middle of winter where you're not doing much anyways, but.
I was brand new, so it was good I had all that information.
Right.
You know, there was things that I did not know, and that was very helpful. And if we have a couple of new members, it will be nice to have more that, also, I think for, for the people that are presenting, this is in public, so they're stating what they do, so you'd hate to say to them, no, we don't really care, because we do, of course we do, but we don't have the time for it. I mean, that's something we have to think about too. I mean, we got a few minutes, and I think that's an important thing for the morale of staff and for everything else. I just think it's.
I think it's a good point. Good PR. Yep.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because again, it's not an attempt to try and shortchange anyone's committee or anyone's position in the town or anything. But I do wonder, is the town watching until 10 o'clock at night? Are people going to sit through a 3-hour FinCom meeting just to get through the whole thing? I don't know. It's sort of, it's almost a cart and horse issue. Or is it more important to keep the meeting or make the meeting slightly more kind of numbers dense and superfluous less? Or is it more important to still have that PR activity to it?
I completely understand and to a certain extent support the PR value of this, but that's not in the remit in the charter, right? The finance committee's role is to do the due diligence to be able to provide a recommendation on the budget at town meeting. So to whatever extent the members of the finance committee feel is necessary to feel comfortable with that recommendation, that's what it takes to get there, right? So if it's less, it's less. If it's more, it's more. That's the primary reason for doing this.
Yes, I always hate this argument of what the town charter is, blah, blah, blah. The town charter is, we are the legislative body. And we're the only subcommittee within the legislative body. We serve an important purpose from the perspective of vetting ideas before they go to the entire. We are the Ways and Means Committee for the town. So I do think it's important to be thorough on every aspect of this, and it is important to look out for, every voting member of the town, that they're getting the services that their tax dollars are going towards. I think we should be thorough in what we do. If you're looking for ways of speeding things up, those were my ideas. I don't know that it was overly long last year. There were a couple contentious items on the thing last year. I mean, there was 21 or whatever capital plan items. There was the whole thing related to School Street. There's the whole municipal design committee, TC Passio. So last year was I don't see that we're going to have as many of those this year. We've kind of reorganized in town, with the facilities director, right? So that's an important one to understand how that plays out this year. Always in the way we, provide services, fire, police, schools, I want to know what the school's plan is for teachers and everything else. And again, if we could get that earlier so that we have some time to stew on it and then focus out. If we can't, we can't. I also think it's important, like we said over the last couple of years, that we want the recommendation of the elected board that oversees that department through the process as well. So,
that becomes tricky though, because if my recollection is correct, the school committee will see the superintendent's recommendations in December, I believe.
Understand, yeah.
Which of course,
yeah.
they have the majority of the budget that's going to take a long time to get through.
Yeah, I understand that. If it's not possible, it's not possible. I understand that as well.
And I fully agree that, with the superintendent, that the school committee should probably see it before the finance committee should see it.
And the way the calendar works this year, it's exactly the way it has the last couple of years, which is the school committee is going to vote on the budget the night before it comes to the finance committee. So, there's certainly a vetting process that takes place, but these things take time, so. And most of the timing has nothing to do with the departments. It has to do with the availability of information that comes when it comes.
Yeah, so I don't know, maybe we don't make any major changes this year in what we're requesting.
I mean, the big change this year is wanting to do a line by line with each department that comes through, right? And
I feel like we
articulating
used to
that.
do that. When I used to watch FinCom meetings,
But we haven't the last few years, and we've articulated this year that that's what we want to do,
yeah,
so. And that could potentially be more time consuming than what we've done in the past. So,
Some budgets, I would think so.
Yeah.
Because there's gonna be a lot more questions and conversation come up for some of those lines. Otherwise, you just kind of get grouped into, it's this administrative line, and therefore, that's just the administrative role.
I think if they get the information to us ahead of time and we as a committee, make the effort to review it ahead of time, we can, kind of like they did at the town meetings, just fly through things, no, we don't want to talk about, this section, that section, but I have a question on this, that, and the other, and just focus on the things that we have questions on. And then, that could speed things up.
Almost a consent calendar of the,
Yeah, I mean, we could,
The budgets.
I just think it's, sometimes when you get something so big and you're reviewing it, it takes time. And you might even have questions, we might even have questions even before the meeting, just to clarify, does this mean that, is this under that line item? Because I know historically, like, well, what does this mean? I mean, is that, because the title doesn't tell you what it really is, or it might not. So we just need to know. I think the other thing I think the select board had mentioned was to us was to be, people, this is their job, the people who are talking to us, and they're, for the most part, and they are, they have other things in life, so we be careful with their time too. And I think we're talking more about certain people, but I think all of them we should be caring about, making sure we use their time valuably and not ask too much of them.
yeah, I think no matter what we end up trying to do, I don't think we're gonna end up shortening any of the meetings. I think they're just gonna go on anyways as they're going to go on, but I wonder, my ideal goal at the end of this is just to get to a point where we are doing sort of exactly what you were saying, Chris, where we're doing what our job is to do, which is to go through and be the legislative check for the town on these budgets and actually ask all the questions and really go into it so that our recommendation actually carries with it the full weight that it should. Aside from meeting the DPW director, just to have him come in, and the Board of Assessors, like I said, I wanted to have him come in as well, just to sort of give us an overview of how that works and how that money comes in and what the process is. The superintendent and the business, HR director and business director of Mr. Cassidy are coming in as well, just to kind of talk to us about where they're at with the school itself. And I think that's one of the bigger ones, is to kind of get through what their personnel plans are, what their ESSER plans are, just in general, before we actually get into what their actual budgetary numbers are and what their plans are for hiring and whatnot, and everything in the spring or in the winter. My plan was also to reach out to fire and police and just have them come through for an impromptu, or just a very casual conversation just about where they're at with their purchases, where they're at with equipment and everything. Those meetings usually aren't too terrible, but just to at least sort of, again, get the conversation going and started a little bit earlier. Are there any other departments or budgets that we may be able to benefit from having come in earlier?
No, I mean, I think the incremental capital planning, and them, I think, being taped and televised will help the process as well. So we gotta make sure we, continue to get inputs from our representative, Dave, on that.
I haven't reached out to Dave in a while.
I don't think they've had a meeting in a while.
No, we met.
They met.
I'm now on the capital planning committee, as it turns out.
You took Brian's spot.
I did.
Okay.
So, we met on Monday,
On Monday?
just an organizational
Oh, okay.
meeting predominantly and to set up our schedule.
You are taping them, right?
Yep.
Okay.
It was,
Yep.
it's on YouTube.
This was on Zoom, and we're going to attempt to use the new Zoom equipment that's at the Ritter Building for our subsequent meetings. So they'll begin on, I believe, the 17th of October, and we'll do sort of another review of submissions and then begin the following week with department presentations. And they will be probably not broadcast live, but taped.
At least.
And they'll be hybrid, so there will be a Zoom option if somebody wants to join in live on Zoom.
You know, just one concern I have with this upcoming season is if we are 5 members, and, you know, I know personally business travel is picking back up, and I think Tom may also have, Tom Baelish may have business travel as well, and there's always a, you know, personal travel that pops up at that time too. I'm concerned about availability of folks with only 5 of us, a quorum, because we need 4, right? So I can't,
Does quorum not shift to the number that you actively have?
no.
Total of the committee.
That's unfortunate.
So again, any plea for, for members would be greatly appreciated.
Any other final thoughts on this? Okay. I'll send out an email after this as well, just kind of updating dates and whatnot to the committee, just so we have ideas for when people are going to be coming in and what, so they can kind of possibly generate some ideas or some questions that they may want to ask ahead of time. All right, moving on to minutes, which are, we do not have the 9/8 minutes loaded up, so we are good on minutes. We can just kind of scratch this off for now. I put it on there just in case we got them in time, but they're not up there yet.
So were 8:25 minutes approved? Do we know?
I have to go back and look.
Okay.
Look in the 9/8 minutes.
Yeah.
We don't have.
Which, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'll leave the, I'll leave the August minutes in the to be approved drive until I go back
So
and
you
take a
know.
look. I'll check with Amanda, she may know.
And you know that you still have, once they're approved, you have to save them to PDF and send them to the town clerk's office.
I did not know that,
Yeah,
no.
you need to do that. So
Okay.
it doesn't magically happen.
Oh,
So
I just assumed that we said approved and the approval fairy came in and signed them and sent them off.
It doesn't work that way. So for what it's worth, somebody needs to do that, either you or the clerk or whomever.
Got it.
So-
Yeah, there's no workflow in this.
I'll take a look. We probably have a few sitting there then. All right, committee reports. Board of Health has met a few times, and we have really not done anything that would affect the Finance Committee in the slightest. Nothing really updated with COVID as well. They have, oh, actually, I will plug this. I believe at last count, there were 17 cases of COVID tests in the Board of Health's stash. Andrea was gonna bring some over to the Eagle House. She was gonna bring some over to Town Hall. I don't know if she's done that yet. But there are COVID tests available through the Board of Health if anyone is looking for some. Just send a note off to Andrea at the Board of Health and you could certainly go with those.
Good to know.
Capital Planning Committee, are we allowed to have you talk about the Capital Planning Committee through the school committee, through the Capital Planning Committee?
What I just said is basically the whole story.
Okay.
So, I mean, but I'm happy to comment on it. So, and I actually met with Heather earlier this week on it as well. So the capital, basically, we're in full swing. Tom Alonso is now the chair of the Capital Planning Committee. Dave is still vice chair, and I'm clerk. And the meeting schedule will be, the weeks there's a school committee meeting, so the first and third weeks of the month, it will be on Monday. And the second and fourth weeks of the month, where there's planning board meetings, it'll be on Wednesday. So it's basically to accommodate the off weeks of the planning board and the school committee.
What time do they meet?
I believe we're going to be meeting at 6:30,
Downstairs or upstairs at the Ritter?
where the new equipment is, wherever that is. I believe it's downstairs.
Because Board of Health meets first and third Mondays at 7
Okay.
in that space.
Okay.
We'll have a joint meeting,
That was the intent anyway, so it needs to get worked out.
of course.
Those meetings have historically not been too long, though, right?
Well, I'm a new member, so I can't comment on that one. I don't really know. No, I just don't know. I mean,
Because I thought they usually did them like an hour and a half.
yeah, I think the
before
intent was to
select
keep them to
board.
90 minutes, so, but, yeah.
They might get longer though with Peter there.
Do we have, at some point,
DPW.
we as a committee will need to be replacing Mr. Passios at some point. What is his plan for finishing up
His term on, so I don't want to speak for Dave, but I can tell you that his term expires at the end of this year,
calendar year?
end of the fiscal year.
Fiscal year. Okay, so we'll have him through this capital plan committee. Okay, so we don't need to worry about that as a committee yet.
Yeah, next time we reorganize,
We'll have to.
his term will be up.
Okay, perfect. And I assume if he decides to leave, then we'll have to replace from within us.
For the remainder of the year.
Okay.
Yep.
Council on Aging, we still don't have a liaison, so I wrote my name down here, so I'll reach out to them next time and see what we can get for an update from the Council on Aging. DPW, okay, anything with DPW?
No, I've not conversed with him lately.
Okay. Tom, Green Communities?
They did have a meeting. I did not actually watch it. I went to look for it in the archives and I couldn't find it. So I was looking to talk to two of the people I know and I have.
It's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube.
It is?
Yep,
I
it's
couldn't
there.
find it.
Yep.
I'll double check then. Or I'll talk to Dave.
Talking
Either
about
way.
Branson Street lights.
Right, yeah.
It might have been posted after, but it is there. I didn't watch it, but I did see it was there.
No land use. And the other one I have is the municipal building, and we do have a meeting on the 3rd, October 3rd. And we might, just an FYI, that committee is probably going to be having a meeting with the select board, like we had the other day on the 11th. So interesting watching.
It's gonna be a busy meeting if they're doing a joint meeting and then also voting on warrant articles.
Yeah,
It's a long one.
depends on if they go as long as we did. Yeah.
Parks Committee.
Yeah, so they had their meeting last night. I went over most of this. They voted on what to recommend to be funded under ARPA, which was the design portion of the budget, as well as the first phase. Like I said, they also looked to put the design on the warrant article like we looked about, just as a kind of belts and suspenders kind of thing, in case, the ARPA funding is not used for it. And there was also some discussion centered around outreach to current and potentially future representatives for support for state level and grant funding to continue that project. I know our representatives like big projects and big checks and, that sort of thing. So we'll see if we can get some some traction behind those funds for that project. I think that was it.
Okay. Sewer Commission, I will reach out to them, and then we get to School Committee. The School Committee met. I have not had a chance to watch the meeting yet, but Ms. Archambault was kind enough to send me a note about their presentation that they went through on their proposal for the FY24 capital plan. And she was careful to lay out that, as Peter mentioned earlier, that these are not all expectations for the capital plan. It's more of a transparency document than anything else, because it is rather hefty at the end. I don't want to go through it just yet because it's not on the agenda, but if we'd like to go through it at some point, I personally don't think we need to go through it just yet. I think it's a capital plan decision first, and we are not the capital planning committee. But I have at least put it in the OneDrive for people to take a look at if they want to look through it and just get an idea as to what the school committee is kind of looking for. Other than that, Peter, was there anything else that was of substance?
No, there's a lot going on, but I think that was the most financially pertinent.
Okay.
And I believe the school committee, I think we're going to vote on that at our next, we have not, I don't think we voted on it. Carol would have to chime in, but I think it might be on our next agenda as well.
It'll be on our next agenda.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right.
I did watch the sewer commission meeting they had the other night. I watched it on YouTube. And they had discussion regarding the 40B pond view and the, letter they submitted to the ZBA and the concerns around the, the fees associated that would have to be paid to Leominster, which are in, around $2 million. And there's, potential there to have huge financial impact to sewer commission if they would have to pay that. They also discussed ARPA funding, the recommendations, the number one being pump station maintenance or upgrades, then work on manholes, I believe mainly like along 2A. And then they also discussed, if possible, with ARPA purchasing a large generator for use as a backup for the pump station should they need it. They also talked about it making it available to other town departments, and there was a discussion if that would still fall under the guidelines of ARPA to be able to do that. So that's, they had three recommendations. And they also did some discussion on I&I removal, pipe restoration, particularly in the Whalum district, as that's known. Even though they've done some work down there, the laterals going to the individual houses are still old clay pipes, and they're the most, they're the biggest issue for I&I, is the clay pipes, and they're not, and because of their age and they're brittle, they'd be very difficult, they believe, to try and do pipe restoration on. So that was most of the discussion.
Excellent. Thank you.
Do you know how, out of curiosity, do you happen to know how much power is required to run a pump station?
I don't know how much power is in. I know they have diesel-powered generators.
A better question, I guess, is what size generator are they looking to buy? Yeah. Do you know?
They didn't have specifics on it. They talked about the price range that was thrown out there was about $35,000. They're talking about like a generator, like a trailer-mounted generator.
Yeah. So it's probably like a 15 or a 30K. Okay. Probably a 30 at that price.
I don't know, generators have gotten very expensive.
Yeah.
I did get a note from Amanda. We did approve the 8:25 minutes on
Okay.
9/8.
Great.
Good.
All
So
right.
we just
We're
need
up to
9/8.
date.
We are. There we go.
Just got to submit them.
Exactly. Let's see if that ferry can get working. So item 11 on here apparently did not copy over because that was supposed to be future meeting ideas. At this point, I just have the joint meeting potentially with our financial planner once we get the debt capacity projects done. And then obviously next meeting is going to be our public hearing meeting. All right, any public comment from the committee?
I do. So this is my last meeting as a member of the Finance Committee. And I have a few thank yous to share, but before I do that, I can't imagine how many people are watching, but maybe some people will watch on YouTube later. Serving on the Finance Committee has been, a real pleasure for me. It's been a rewarding experience. Aside from just, what drives me to feel like I'm adequately giving back and serving the community. I've also been a member of the Finance Committee during the COVID era. And there's been a lot of press coverage and conversation about, how disconnected we all are, because we're connected electronically and because we're able to do things like work remotely and work from home, many of us, we become disconnected from real people. And, for what it's worth, or people who would consider joining a committee like the Finance Committee, one of the reasons why I've found it rewarding is I get to meet people like the people sitting on the stage here with me, and get to interact with, department heads and other people around town who have opinions about how we're doing things. And for me personally, somebody who mostly works from home, it scratches that itch. It gives an opportunity for a connection that I wouldn't otherwise have, and I personally really appreciate. So on my list of thank yous, and they're a little long, Terry Birchfield, Michelle Walton, John Henshaw, Dave Passios, who are all former members of this committee and all were very helpful and welcoming to me, and were great to work with, and I consider all of them to be great townspeople in Lunenburg, and in the case of Dave in particular, and Terry, good friends. Heather and Karen, I can't say enough about you and your professionalism and your responsiveness, and I thank you for dealing with my craziness on occasion.
Thank you.
Probably more frequent than I would care to admit, but I appreciate it nonetheless. To all the department heads, really for the same reasons, but for your service to the town in particular, and your work with the Finance Committee, for Kathy and Ellen in the town clerk's office, for dealing with last-minute agenda postings and those kinds of things that can become kind of hairy on occasion, and they were always very willing and accommodating. To Joe McLaughlin and all of the videographers from PAC for sitting through some endless, monotonous conversations, but staying awake enough to move the camera when the conversation turns, at least. I greatly appreciate it. Michael Ray Jeffries, in particular, as chairman of the select board, but also somebody who's been, really open to me and willing to really work out some, long and involved conversations about major issues, and has always been, extremely giving of his time, but also all the members of the select board, and to Carol Archambault and all of the members of the school committee, for really the same reasons, and obviously for welcoming me to the school committee. I would have, if you had asked me 6 months ago, I would have told you that my intent would be to stay on the Finance Committee in perpetuity, because I really enjoyed it. And so, each of the members of this committee, thank you. It's been a pleasure to get to know you, all of you, and to serve with you. And then also, on a personal level, I'm driven to public service because of my parents. Many people watching know my parents. They served on many committees during my childhood, and that's kind of how I got that bug. And they've been great examples. My surrogate parents, believe it or not, Michael Ray and I share surrogate parents, Dave and Karen Rogers. I've known Dave and Karen since I was 4 years old, hanging out at Rogers Drive-In, which I know many people in this room don't know what that is, but probably some people watching do, making bubblegum ice cream with Dave. So that relationship goes back a long way. He's been a great sounding board over the years. And also my girlfriend, Lisa Asselin, for putting up with my venting about town stuff, mostly, and occasionally sharing a good idea, and occasionally sharing a crazy idea. And my kids, Rose Beardmore and Raymond Beardmore, for occasionally dealing with me not being around, because I do this as my hobby. So thank you all very much. It's been a pleasure to serve on the Finance Committee, and I won't be too far. You guys will still hear from me pretty frequently, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Other comment for the board?
Yeah, just thank you, Peter, for the last couple of years that I've been on FinCom, and for being the chairman for the part of that. Yeah, no, I think you've been a great addition to the town, and will be a great addition to school committee, and I don't fear that we won't see you
Yeah. Be
in
bad.
these venues.
Can assure you that is not going to be a problem.
So, thanks again, Peter.
Thank you, Peter. It's been great working with you.
I have a picture of Dave Rogers making bubblegum ice cream now. I can't get it out of my head.
Imagine a much younger Dave Rogers and a much younger Pete Beardmore.
Thank you, Peter. I agree with Chris. I think you've done this committee and this town a very good service by how you've served on the Finance Committee and the issues that you've pushed and the work that you've done as well. And while I think we'll certainly miss your presence on the committee, I don't expect that this is the last we'll hear from you on the committee at all. And the school committee, I think, is lucky to have you. I think the town is lucky to have you on the school committee as well. I think there's going to be some more fights to be fought, for
I
sure.
think you're probably right. Thank you all.
Any public comment from the public? Seeing and hearing none. Our upcoming meetings, again, we have a public hearing that is going to be listed in the ledger for Thursday, October 13th at 7 p.m. It will also be put across on Zoom and the Collins. And also, we'll have the ability to call in as well if necessary, if people would like to. That agenda will be posted shortly so that we can get that out as soon as possible as well. Other upcoming meetings are going to be October 27th, and then November 10th, and then November 15th is special town meeting. Before we know it, we've only got 3 more meetings before we have a special town meeting. With that,
I just have one question, maybe kind of related to meetings and timing. Do you usually put a report in the special town meeting, right, only in the annual?
Last year we did for some reason. Oh, it's because of the building issue with TC Passios. We did do it,
Okay.
but that was an abnormal
one-off.
thing. It's
Okay.
not a normal thing.
Okay, so none of these meetings need to be aligned to that?
I don't think so, no. And then depending upon how, well, yeah, actually, we'll have to our only option is to have our public hearing on the 13th, because after that, the 27th, we're past the
Got to get the thing
date
published.
before we can actually submit for town meeting, I believe.
So is the plan to take votes on the 13th as well?
We're gonna have to. We're gonna have to hear numbers, take votes, or discuss and then take votes, all that.
So to be clear, that's to get it in the warrant, because just of the timing, it takes a month to print, mail, and get the warrant to people in time. But that's not to say that you can't vote
You can always-
after the warrant is, or re-vote, or do whatever you want after the warrant
Right.
is published.
I think there's some articles that are going to be no-brainers for votes at that one, but if there's anything that is worthy of discussion.
We can always defer.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a feeling we're going to be deferring on a few of them anyways. And there are a number of them on here that do not have numbers that I'm not entirely, that are coming from all different sources, so I'm not sure that we're going to get numbers before
Yep.
this stuff.
Yeah, it does feel like things are later this year for whatever reason. It's taking a little bit more time to get a clear picture of what things look like.
All right, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Peter?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 8:51 PM.